Karen Whitmore's perfectly manicured nails clawed at the air as she sprinted down Maple Street, her HOA clipboard clutched against her chest like a shield. Behind her, a pack of neighborhood dogs, ranging from Mrs. Chen's ancient beagle to the Rodriguez family's hyperactive golden retriever, bounded after her with gleeful determination, their barks echoing off the pristine sidewalks of Willowbrook Estates. "This is a violation of Ordinance 47B," she shrieked over her shoulder, her usually immaculate blonde bob now a disheveled mess. "Unleashed pets are strictly prohibited." The chase had started innocently enough. Karen had been conducting her weekly compliance inspection when she'd spotted the Miller family's German Shepherd, Zeus, lounging unleashed on their front porch. Armed with her citation book and righteous indignation, she'd marched up their driveway, already composing the strongly worded notice in her head. "Excuse me," she'd announced to Zeus, as if the dog could comprehend HOA bylaws, "but you're in direct violation of." Zeus had tilted his head, seemingly listening. Then he'd let out a single powerful bark that somehow triggered a neighborhood-wide canine revolt. Dogs materialized from backyards, slipped through fence gaps, and bounded off porches. Within seconds, Karen found herself surrounded by a furry militia that appeared to have been waiting for this exact moment. Now, as she rounded the corner onto Oak Avenue, her sensible HOA-approved beige flats slapping against the pavement, Karen realized she was heading straight for the community park, the very park she'd successfully lobbied to ban dogs from just last month. "The irony is not lost on me," she gasped, glancing back at her pursuers. The pack had grown. Even Mr. Peterson's ancient basset hound, Gus, who usually moved at the speed of molasses, was somehow keeping pace with surprising enthusiasm. Karen's mind raced as fast as her feet. As HOA president, she prided herself on maintaining order, on keeping their little suburban paradise exactly as it should be. Every hedge perfectly trimmed, every mailbox regulation compliant, every dog properly contained. But now, gasping for breath and fleeing from the very creatures she'd spent months trying to regulate, she felt her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. She spotted the park's gazebo ahead, her salvation. If she could just reach it, climb up onto the platform, she'd be safe. The dogs couldn't follow her up there, could they? As she reached the gazebo steps, Karen's foot caught on the bottom riser. She tumbled forward, her clipboard flying, citation papers scattering like confetti in the wind. The dogs surrounded the gazebo, tails wagging, tongues lolling out in what looked suspiciously like victorious grins. From her position on the gazebo floor, Karen looked down at the furry tribunal below and realized something that chilled her more than the autumn breeze. They weren't leaving. 3 hours later, Karen remained trapped atop the gazebo like a perfectly coiffed damsel in the world's most ridiculous distress. The dogs had settled into a patient vigil below, some lying down, others sitting at attention as if they were guarding a prize. Zeus, the apparent ringleader, had positioned himself directly at the gazebo steps, his intelligent brown eyes never leaving Karen's face. "This is ridiculous," Karen muttered, pulling out her phone. Dead battery. Of course, she'd been so focused on her inspection route that she'd forgotten to charge it overnight, a mistake she never made. Karen Whitmore was nothing if not prepared, except, apparently, for a canine uprising. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly, and Karen's professional blazer clung uncomfortably to her skin. She'd removed her jacket hours ago, revealing a silk blouse that was now wrinkled beyond redemption. Her hair, usually shellacked into submission with enough hairspray to damage the ozone, hung limply around her face. "You know," she called down to Zeus, her voice hoarse from earlier screaming, "I was only trying to help. Do you have any idea how many complaints I get about unleashed dogs? Mrs. Pemberton's roses, trampled. The Johnsons' garbage, scattered across 3 lawns. Zeus tilted his head again, and Karen swore she saw judgment in those dark eyes. The sound of approaching footsteps made her heart leap. Finally, rescue. But her relief quickly turned to mortification as she spotted Tom Miller, Zeus's owner, rounding the corner of the park. Behind him walked what appeared to be half the neighborhood, all the dog owners she'd cited, fined, or harassed over the past year. Well, well, Tom called up to her, his arms crossed. Having a little trouble with your enforcement today, Karen? This is all highly irregular, Karen replied, attempting to maintain her dignity despite her disheveled appearance. Your dog is clearly the instigator here. I demand you remove him immediately so I can come down. Funny thing, said Mrs. Chen, joining Tom at the base of the gazebo. Her ancient beagle Winston wagged his tail lazily beside her. Zeus here came running to our doors about 3 hours ago, almost like he was asking for help. Dogs are smarter than you think, Karen. Karen felt a chill that had nothing to do with the autumn air. What are you implying? We're not implying anything, said Dave Rodriguez, his golden retriever panting happily at his side. We're saying it outright. You've made our lives miserable for months with your petty cetaceans and ridiculous rules. Maybe it's time you experienced a little inconvenience yourself. Karen's mouth fell open. Are you conspiring with dogs against me? Conspiring? Tom laughed. Karen, these dogs just did what we've all wanted to do for months. They chased you out there all on their own. We're just enjoying the show. As if on cue, Zeus let out a single bark, and the other dogs responded with a chorus of agreement. Karen realized with growing horror that she wasn't just trapped by animals. She was trapped by an entire community that had apparently reached its breaking point with her leadership. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Beautiful colors that Karen normally would have criticized as too vibrant for HOA-approved landscaping. But now, stranded and surrounded, she found herself actually noticing the beauty for the first time in years. What do you want? She finally asked, her voice smaller than before. The dog owners exchanged glances. Then Tom smiled, not a friendly smile, but not entirely cruel either. We want to talk. By the time the streetlights flickered on, Karen had been forced to confront some uncomfortable truths. Sitting cross-legged on the gazebo floor, a position she would normally consider undignified, she listened as neighbor after neighbor shared their grievances. The dogs remained in their protective circle, but they'd relaxed considerably, some even dozing in the evening warmth. Do you remember when my daughter Sarah was going through chemotherapy? Asked Janet Morrison, her voice steady but firm. She found comfort in sitting on our front porch with our golden retriever, honey. You cited us 14 times for having an unleashed pet in a visible area. 14 times, Karen, while my daughter was fighting for her life. Karen's throat tightened. She remembered the cetaceans, remembered feeling frustrated that the Morrisons wouldn't simply follow the rules like everyone else. She hadn't known about the cancer. She'd never asked. And what about when Hurricane Debbie knocked down half our fence? Added Carlos Mendez. Instead of offering help, you left a notice threatening legal action if we didn't replace it within 72 hours. It was a weekend, Karen. No contractors were even available. Story after story poured out, each one chipping away at Karen's self-righteousness. She thought she was protecting their community's values, maintaining the high standards that kept their property values soaring. But sitting there, surrounded by dogs and neighbors she'd systematically alienated, she began to see herself through their eyes. I was doing my job, she said weakly. The HOA board elected me to enforce the covenants. No, Karen, Tom said gently. They elected you to serve the community. There's a difference. Zeus stood up suddenly, his ears pricked. A moment later, Karen heard what had caught his attention, the sound of approaching sirens. Someone had called the police. Oh no, she whispered, realizing how this must look. HOA president held hostage by neighborhood dogs. The local news would have a field day. Her reputation, her authority, everything she'd worked for would be destroyed. But as the police cars pulled up and officers approached the gazebo, something unexpected happened. The dog owners stepped forward, not to gloat, but to explain the situation calmly and reasonably. They painted the scene not as a hostage situation, but as a community intervention gone slightly awry. Ma'am, Officer Rodriguez, no relation to Dave, called up to Karen. Are you injured? Do you need medical attention? Karen looked around at the faces below her, human and canine alike. For the first time in years, she really saw her neighbors, not as rule breakers or property value threats, but as people trying to live their lives in the community they all called home. No, she said slowly, standing up and brushing off her skirt. I think I just needed a change of perspective. As she climbed down from the gazebo, Zeus moved aside but didn't retreat. Instead, he approached her slowly, his tail wagging tentatively. Karen hesitated, then reached out to pat his head. His fur was softer than she'd expected. "I owe you all an apology," she announced to the assembled group. "I lost sight of why we have a community in the first place." The crowd murmured, surprised by her admission. But Tom stepped forward, extending his hand. "We're all neighbors here, Karen. Maybe it's time we started acting like it." As Karen shook his hand, she noticed something troubling in the distance. A black sedan parked at the park's entrance, its occupants watching the scene with intense interest. The vehicle bore no identifying marks, but something about its presence felt ominous. "Tom," she said quietly, not wanting to alarm the others, "do you recognize that car?" Tom followed her gaze and frowned. "No, but they've been there for about 20 minutes, just watching." As if sensing their scrutiny, the sedan's engine started, and it pulled away slowly, deliberately. Karen felt a chill run down her spine. In her years as HOA president, she'd made enemies beyond just her neighbors. There were developers who'd wanted to build in their green spaces, city officials she'd challenged over zoning issues, and at least one very angry contractor she'd publicly accused of shoddy work. The dog seemed to sense the tension too. Zeus moved closer to Karen, his protective instincts engaged once again. "I think," Karen said slowly, "our problems might be bigger than just HOA violations."